Hey, how's it going, buddy?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Doing good. I believe Lauren and Joe are coming for sure. We're waiting for Rob also.
Okay.
Oh, there she is. Go ahead and get
Sorry?
Lauren's coming in right now. So,
Okay.
I know Joe asked me to resend the invite, which I did. So, hopefully he gets it and we can get him in here. I did invite all the BC members. John and Tamara unfortunately cannot make it as they had prior engagements. And then Lloyd cannot make it. He does not even own a computer. So, but Callie, Zach, and Michelle might join. So
Okay. Well, good.
I'm new to this, by the way. So
Oh, that's okay.
you,
Lauren, how are you?
I think she's still.
I think you got yourself muted.
Yeah, she's got herself muted.
My bad. Hi, I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm doing well.
Good.
Looking forward to the holiday.
Yeah.
I'm sad we're not doing this down at Beaver Springs right now.
I think most of us are. Very sad about it.
Yeah.
But I do want to thank you guys for doing this because I know it takes a lot of bravery to join up with something like this and not know what's going to happen, you know. But there's several things that I think we need to discuss, and several things that the tribal members are kind of looking for answers on, and hopefully you guys can give us your plan on what you want to do.
Oh, yeah.
So while I got you guys here and while we're waiting for everybody else, what did you think of the last business committee meeting?
Trying to think about how to word this best. Well, I think that there definitely needs to be a parliamentarian to come in and have a class. Robert's Rules of Order were not followed at all. I actually think kind of coming to the conclusion that nobody has a firm grasp on how to introduce subsidiary motions at all, or realize which ones do and don't have to be voted on. So that was a big issue. And then I guess the whole tenor of the issue for me was probably the unwillingness for transparency, which is sort of one of the bedrock issues, kind of why we decided to get involved and decided to run. So those were the two that really stuck out the most to me.
Yeah. What did you think, Lauren?
I was a little troubled by the tones that both of them had with our members, and it seemed to be more of a, I don't know, it was like they weren't wanting to acknowledge it at all.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like that was something that they should have had more discussion on, and they probably already knew about. Them saying that they didn't know the accusations or anything like that seemed weird.
Yeah, I have to agree there. To me, I read Tamara's letter in response to the accusations. So when she said that she didn't know what they were talking about or had no knowledge of the accusations, to me it was a little troubling. But you know, I think Callie's phone cutting out probably also inhibited them from getting what they wanted to get done, because a lot of Callie's responses were cut off or you couldn't understand what she was saying. And I honestly think Callie has a good grasp of Robert's Rules of Order.
I think she does too. I mean, you could even hear it that she, well, one, the motion was never brought for a table, but even in open discussion there, she brought up the issue that it needed to be voted on, and she was 100% right.
Well, that's the thing too, is in order to table something, you need 2/3 majority to even. I mean, either way, it's a vote. It's got to happen. There's got to be a vote on whether it be tabled or whether.
Oh yeah, that is not a unilateral power of the chairman. You cannot wave your hand or magic wand and be able to, I guess, silence a matter that you don't feel is something you want to discuss at that point in time. I mean, it's really up for discussion whether you want it to or not if you don't have the voting ability to table the issue.
Yes.
So,
well, we just had.
Might catch Joseph up on where we're at.
All right. Well, Joe, we're discussing the last business committee meeting. I asked Guy and both Lauren what they thought. I want to get your thoughts on the issue also. What did you think of the last BC meeting? Can you hear us?
Yeah, I don't think we can hear you, man.
Oh, he's got it muted. Let me get him rolling here.
No, it might be your earpiece.
Yep, still not hearing anybody. I'm trying to help you along. Well, I think we're starting to get something. Your video is you've got to start your video, buddy. Well, while he's fixing his issues, since we're only allotted a certain amount of time on Zoom, let's move into the settlements, because I know that's a big issue. That's kind of both sides are saying different things. I know that the incumbent side is saying that you guys are trying to get Bear settled for specific families. What is your response to that?
Well, I think we had kind of outlined that in the letter, and we had published the settlement itself, and the pleadings are out there for the case itself, the recommendation that was written by Judge Wheeler, and the way that it was structured, and just verbatim, word for word, is that the funds themselves should be paid to the claimants, which are the Quapaw people. And the letter that our opponents have kind of waved around are just the named plaintiffs, and the exact language in there is that the recommendation should be enforced, that those funds should be paid to the claimants rather than being paid to the tribe and then being distributed. And I think their primary concern is that the Quapaw Nation has not adopted the Indian Civil Rights Act. So they have absolutely no legal recourse if they were ever defrauded of any money in the future. So some people feel like the judge's recommendation should be enforced. But this, I guess, presentation that only certain family members or that only these people listed within the letter are trying to get paid is malarkey. That's not at all how it's written. If you go in and read the pleadings, read the settlement agreement, I understand it's long. I understand people may not have the time. It's probably all told, put together, 50, 60 pages worth of reading.
Well,
but
I think that too.
But it's very clear. It's very, I mean, there's no ambiguity to it, is that it just should be paid to the claimants. It should be paid to the tribal members directly. It should not have to hit a middleman.
So when you're saying claimants, you're talking about all tribal members, though. You're not
Yes.
talking specifically the landowners or the
No. That was not the specific damages within Bear. Now it was on Good Eagle. That's a completely different ball of wax. And I mean, I think that even should be sort of a cautionary tale on what could happen as well. I mean, I think if you saw my most recent letter that we put out, I mean, there is an exhibit within the damage calculations on there that not our family or our legal representation on that side, we did not prepare that. Marzullo, which was another law firm that was hired by Connor and Winters to go up there and put this together, that was their own calculation that the tribe actually bore less than 0.6% of the damages.
Mm-hmm.
And so how is it that they can get a $59 million distribution and then still be holding $40 million of that makes no sense, you know? And so that's really kind of where the crux is. And then I guess if you kind of do the math on a proposed distribution on Bear as well, the majority of the money will be kept by the tribe. I mean, it's going to be nearly $100 million. And I think that there's an argument that money could be kept and invested and things could be done with it, programs with the tribe. But the thing is that it belongs to tribal members. And if tribal members want to waive those damages, if they want to give it over to the tribe, you know, donate it, then they can do that. But you have to ask them. You can't just take it.
I agree.
And that's really our position on it.
That's some very solid words there. Lauren, what do you think about the whole Good Eagle / Bear / Quapaw settlements? What is your view on them?
You're asking my view?
Yes.
I align very well with what they've been saying. I kind of came later into the game on reading all of the lawsuit and seeing all the tribal members' concerns online, but it seems like some of what's being put out there is they're taking it out of context, or they're not reading like the actual, like the wording of it, which I know it gets really confusing if you haven't gone to law school.
Yes. I think we all agree that when you're looking at settlements, if you're not careful, it can be turned into something else real quick. I think we've got Joe. He still needs to unmute, but I wanted to get your view on the last BC meeting, and also while you're at it, go ahead and get into the settlements on your view on that. Joe, I know you're.
I know.
Still not working, huh?
No, we're not hearing it, man. Here, hold on. I've had this happen to me before. Try and leave the call and then call back in on it.
All right. We'll give him a couple minutes. All right. So I brought up earlier, because me and my father went out to Goki Cemetery, and even if you go out to Catholic 40 or there's several small grave sites around for the Quapaws, but several plots don't even have a gravestone. And like I was telling my father as we were walking through there, I said, I almost feel like, I'm being disrespectful, because I don't know if I'm stepping on somebody, because there's no markers or no indications besides a mound there that there is somebody there. What do you guys think about the tribe going ahead and using some of their funds to buy some of these for our ancestors?
Yeah, I think the tribe has done a really great job of keeping up some of these cemeteries, keeping them mowed, even kind of burial insurance as well. But there are situations exactly like what you're describing. I mean, we had one, actually my uncle would be the oldest child, my grandmother Ardina, passed away when he was under a year old. He had choked to death, but he had his headstone out there, and there unfortunately are kind of high school age kids that get witch and ghost stories and decide to go out and visit some of our family cemeteries and deface graves. And they had ripped my uncle's headstone down, in addition to other members of ours at the Griffin Water Cemetery. And so, yeah, I think that's a big issue. And I think that even kind of helping bolster some of the security on some of these cemeteries as well, so that we can kind of help preserve that. I know that there's been issues with other family cemeteries, or at least stories that I've heard, kind of along Spring River, where land allotment was sold and people had come in and decided that they really wanted to build and just decided to doze headstones off into the river. And so, yeah, I really do think that there's something that we could be done to go out and actually help with these grave markings.
The thing is with today's technology, you could easily put trail cams out there, and what's the harm in that? If somebody does go out there and desecrate a grave, it would be easy to, go ahead and get it figured out so it doesn't happen again. But like I said, John Quapaw, he has a piece of tin, and right next to his piece of tin is another piece of tin that's marked the other way. So I don't know, it's very confusing.
Yeah, we have a headstone in our family cemetery right now that it looked as though they went out there with I guess, sledgehammer and knocked the headstone off, and you can literally see where the granite has broke off at the ground level. Mm-hmm. And we've set headstone upright against it as well, next to it. So I think that we're doing excellent work out there with family cemeteries, but I think there's more that can be done as well.
Yeah. And that's the thing too, is I think we have a great group of guys that really, between our grounds crew and the people keeping our traditions alive, Jeremy Olson, Everett, Joey, Bladen, just to name a few. So this isn't in any way, shape, or form be disrespectful towards them. It's just, like you said, we can do more. In my opinion, we can do more. Lauren, what do you think we could do to?
I think even adding like metal plaques where these markers are. I know in my family cemetery, we have 2 or 3 headstones that are just stones. Like there are no markers. We don't know their names. Well, it's written down on a piece of paper somewhere. I don't know their names. And it's like one of those, you go out there and you don't, like you said, you don't know who's out there. And I think that there could even, I know there's technology, they're doing it in Tulsa, to find gravestones and graves to see like where other members are buried. Even if we could just put something out there to mark it.
All right, I think we got Joseph back. Do we actually got you this time?
Man, I hope so.
There we go.
Good deal.
Right.
Good deal.
We've got a couple things. I want to get your viewpoints on the last BC meeting and the settlements. Wow.
So for starters, I am having a hard time. I'm frustrated with the way that our meetings are being held in general. The fact that it's not an open meeting process. It's not a live process. And even the last, the May meeting, it took a little over a month for it to be published and out there in viewing of the general public. So I have qualms with that already. I think, it's 2020, and I know this is a bad plug for being more technological, seeing as how we've had audio problems, but it is 2020, and we should definitely be holding our meetings in a live audience, or at least some kind of platform where there's more engagement by our membership. So that being said, that was my take on both the May as well as the June BC meetings. And then just in terms of this latest one, the more recent one, uh, it was, for starters, embarrassing to me. Uh, I've heard other tribal meetings, the process that they go through. Some of them use Robert's Rules of Orders, some don't. But those that do use Robert's Rules of Orders, there's either a parliamentarian there present, or the process that they follow is a lot more structured. What I saw from the last BC meeting was not at all following Robert's Rules of Order, and that's what we have to go on through our governing resolution. So, to not beat around the bush anymore or belabor it, then you can't just table a resolution.
Yeah.
You can't just table a resolution without calling for a vote, and that is what I saw. So it was a misapplication of Robert's Rules of Order, and then I feel like a little disrespectful to the rest of the business committee, how it was handled, and therefore disrespectful to all members across the board. So that's kind of it in a nutshell. In terms of the Bear and the Good Eagle settlements, I don't think I could articulate it any better than Guy did. I heard what he had to say about it. And the bottom line there is Good Eagle was specifically for named claimants, and the payout or the settlement for the Bear was for all tribal members, and both of those had recommendations by the judge, the federal court judge, in both scenarios, and that is what we advocate for. That's what I'm advocating for, is just to follow what the judge's orders were.
Okay. So what do you guys think about creating a constitution? As I've said several times, I think there are several loopholes and several ways that we can better protect our assets in the future. I've been a huge advocate for a constitution for years. I know last general council motion was passed saying that we were going to create a constitutional committee, and it still has not been established. Of course, we can blame a lot of that on COVID. But I still think it's something that we need to really dive into, because, in 1959, our ancestors, I highly doubt that they were thinking, we're going to have 3 casinos someday. We're going to have 3 gas stations, a meat processing plant, coffee company, etc. So why would they even think to protect those things? And that's nothing in disrespect to them. It's just at that time that wasn't something that was needed. But in today's time, it is clearly needed. So what's your thoughts on it? We'll start. Go ahead and start with you, Joseph, since you're already right here.
Sure. Thank you. So I am in full agreement with you, John, that we absolutely need to reconstitute our government. I don't think we necessarily have to set it up as a 3-branch government, but I do feel like there are loopholes and some gaps that need to be filled with our governing resolution. And for instance, one of those would definitely be setting term limits for all business committee members. And I'm definitely a proponent of that. And I hope that we can have a constitutional convention or a constitutional committee. And I know that there has been discussion of reaching out to an outside party, a third party, to help us write that and to draft that. But I'm a firm believer that something of that magnitude, that's going to be ours for generations, I think that should be something that it be an internal mechanism. We should be our own constitutional drafters and our own implementers of change when it comes to that. And again, term limits are just one thing, but also I feel like reconstituting our government would allow long overdue checks and balances and allow transparency, not just to the business committee, but also to all the members of our tribe.
I agree. Lauren, what's your thoughts on a constitution?
I agree. I think that's something that we need to be implementing as well. And I know that that was something that you and other members have talked about for the committees. I was hoping it would go through this year. I don't feel like COVID is the only reason it hasn't gone through, but I agree with the term limits as well. Something to set up, or we need it.
And Guy, what's your thoughts?
Yeah, that's been my position. I guess I'd often joke and say we should have had a constitution yesterday, but we really do. And not only for loopholes, but modernization factors to kind of keeping with the Freedom of Information, Indian Civil Rights Act, basically just our ability to recognize basic human rights for our tribal citizens, give them the protections that they require. And then kind of like Lauren and Joseph had said, term limits, it's a huge thing. I mean, and I think that there are a lot of hardworking tribal members that kind of get on BC and stay and do great things. Unfortunately, I think it's with a lot of things, the longer you're there and the more growth that happens on your watch, you inevitably grow kind of a sense of ownership with it. And it gets harder to separate people from that sense of ownership. I mean, they really do feel as though it's theirs. And I think that that's really something that should be avoided, particularly when this is something that we're going to be passing down to future generations. And I mean, I don't think that there should be kind of a forced removal. I mean, there should be a plan, so that way we can at least broadcast out to younger tribal members that you're going to be expected to come in, take the reins, encourage certain tribal members to go out and seek different types of education, and know that things will be expected of them, kind of, and win. So,
well, and to kind of carry on with your point, I think you're speaking of complacency. If you stay in a job too long, if there's no movement, you just kind of go along with the flow. It's no longer something that you have to take that much more time in understanding it and establishing. But getting away from that, I think a lot of us are thankful for the things that we have today. I don't think that's up for debate. Especially this year, COVID-19. The funds that we got from there. But what got me thinking on that is for a long time people have talked about disbursements, and if COVID taught us anything, I think that a yearly disbursement could easily be applicable in the future. I think this round cost us $4.4 million, so it's not like it was an astronomical figure. But again, I think most of us are thankful for the things we have. It's not about that. It's, just kind of keep growing and keep a better understanding of where we're going in the future through transparency. Do you guys have any thoughts to share on that?
Well, I mean, I think that getting to that point is definitely something to shoot for. And I understand that we do have a lot of benefit programs, and our goal would be to expand those as well, but also distributions or some kind of cash distribution on that would be nice, because I understand that everybody is in a totally different circumstance. Their family is in a different situation. And I, as if elected, I as a BC member would not be capable and would never feel comfortable telling everybody what would be best for their family, what would be best for their children, what would be best for their personal financial decisions. That's up to them. I wouldn't want anybody telling me how to manage my purse. And so I don't think that should be done either.
It's when you really break it down, it's like the government, and what these lawsuits were based off of, between the government establishing managers over Quapaw funds, over Quapaw money, because they did not believe we were competent. So now it seems to a lot of members that our own government is telling us that we are not competent enough to handle our own, funds. But Joe, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I thought that in terms of shutting down operations with the casino, I think that was a good decision. I think it was a quick response and it was an adequate response. Following that, I don't necessarily share the same view. I will say that I am thankful and grateful for everything that our tribe is able to provide. I don't ever want to come off as sounding ungrateful, but I guess my issue lies with, with our agricultural and our food program. We tout having a greenhouse that produces all of the produce that goes to the casino, as well as our Quapaw Cattle Company, as well as our bison herd. And that's really awesome, and it's really amazing to have those programs. But I don't really feel like specifically our elders in the community received those the products of that, having those programs. And what I mean is, I think it was around mid-April, so roughly a month after the shutdown happened of COVID and the pandemic was spreading. I think my grandmother, who's 89 years old, received a bag of noodles, a cup of noodles, and a few other items. And she's grateful for her services and the programs that are provided to her, but I don't think it was adequate. I really don't, in terms of how we come across as being the leader of food sovereignty in this big agricultural program. I just haven't seen it. If we have buffalo in our pastures out back, I haven't eaten any buffalo, and I don't know of any of my family members that have eaten any bison meat either. So I do want to push back a little bit on that point, and say that I think that we could have, we could always do better in our response.
Yeah.
And so, yeah.
And the thing is, I do agree with you there that, compared to what we say we have and what the tribal members received, did seem a little inadequate. I know people were talking about they got a cup of noodles and a few other just
Can of corn.
really cheap items that, aren't very nutritious for anybody, let alone our elders. But, again, I do want to say that this has nothing to do with being ungrateful. It's simply the fact that, as Joe stated, we tout ourselves as this economic powerhouse in this region, and we just don't have anything to really show for it. Now I know we do give a lot of money to the Quapaw School District, and we also, through our Title VI program, we do provide bison meat to them. But other than that, I have no idea where all this stuff goes. And that's just another thing about transparency, to where all records should be open to tribal members. I do think I should point out that, I said earlier that I reached out to Tamara and John, and Tamara did make a statement. Let me go ahead and get that real quick so I can read it. They had prior engagements, but I think it's fair to argue their point. I wish they could have joined us because I think it could have been a good discussion.
Maybe next time.
Maybe next
Yeah.
time. Hopefully we can do this more often
Yeah, definitely.
now that we've learned how to do it. Okay, so she said there has been a police report filed on Larry Ramsey. He approached DCR CFO Kent Jones, one of the accused of stealing with us, and offered that his team would allow him to remain as the CFO if he would go out and publicly talk trash on myself and John B. I'm not sure if that's blackmail, extortion, or something else, but it should certainly show his claims are questionable and false. Also, I have been requesting any business committee member to meet me at DCR to review any financials and audits they would like to see, and not one single one of them has made an effort to come up and learn the truth. What they're doing is cowardly, and their claims of being in the dark about everything is their own fault. They never speak up about anything, and they have always voted in favor of everything they seem to be complaining about now. It's not my problem if they don't understand the business of the tribe. I'm just very frustrated with every one of them, and people should be outraged with their lack of participation. Sorry for the rant. So that was Tamara's message. I did reach out to Zach, Michelle, and Callie, and I also spoke with Lloyd on the phone as he does not own a computer. But Zach said that he went up there on Thursday, I believe, and not once was that information provided. And Callie basically said the same thing. Her response was an echo to his. She said, as far as Tamara goes, yes, she has offered to show us audits, financials. However, this should have been done all along. At this point, I don't trust an accused person to show me what I need to see. In addition, since we had our meeting, she has lashed out through emails and through her own allegations out at a couple of us. I'm not going to give that a response to that. So it seems to me that, there's definitely, a gap in communication between the BC members right now. Something that we need to fix. Probably we can blame some of this on COVID, but I think a lot of it is just over the years, people have been asking for the same things that are now, recorded on a message, and that's where this is all coming from. If you guys recall, during the meeting, the BC meeting, Tamara stated that not once has, a forensic audit been requested, but yet in her letter in 2018, she stated that Rob Weaver wanted to do a forensic audit, and why wait? Why wait till after he gets elected? So again, I've said this on Everything Quapaw. This is not something new. This has been something that has been requested since 2011, maybe even before then, 2010, whenever we had the 2010 grievance. I know that several people were upset about that and wanted audit done. So what are your thoughts on the forensic audit? Anyone of you?
Okay, I'll jump in here. Yeah, I mean, we're not just big proponents of it. I mean, I guess just in election promises, that's 100% something that we're going to do. I mean, I think that audit day one is gonna be a requirement, and I think that the facts alone, just being that audited financials, detailed audited financials for the downstream, now Saracen, have never been made available to the BC, to tribal members, despite constant requests, which in and of itself, even if everything was above board, completely innocent, it still does not look good. And so that is kind of our general position on, not even just on the gaming properties, but even with the tribe itself, is that I understand that the position has always historically been, well, if you want information, go ahead, come by my office. I'll be happy to show it to you. I don't think that we should have to be there. I think that it should just be broadcasted out there. I think that it should be ready and available to people to sift through it at their, convenience, and then be able to prepare questions and bring those. And then any of these elections, any of us elected to these seats, we should be answerable to that. That's why we're here. So that just, to me, the whole general position of it is that this is a freedom of information issue, and I don't see the point in fighting it. And I agree with you. I mean, I do recall that being Rob's position whenever he ran 2 years ago. I heard forensic audit all the time. Mm-hmm. So I guess the position that this is a new thing, I don't agree with. I guess maybe just more to her statement. The flamboyant language is troublesome for me. It does appear to be somewhat defensive. And that is kind of something that, for me, with regards to Larry Ramser's letter, I mean, this is not a, town jester. This is the only person to ever resign from the DDA from presumably a well-paying job, that left this job. And so he is a credible source, somebody that had unfettered access to any and all information up there. And so to act as though this is just some random accusation from left field, I think that's really what is discouraging for a lot of people, is that they realize that, well, that's not true. That this is a credible source. And if it is, and I think that's why people have been so grateful, particularly with Callie and other members of the BC. I know that they received tons of questions and requests for information, and they were just doing their job and following up with it. I felt that it was brought appropriately. It was very civil. And I mean, I'd like to see it move forward too.
No, I think a lot of people would like to see it move forward. This is not to say that John or Tamara are a thief. I think that language has been used a lot. Obviously, I've even used that language in the past, looking at, different documents, and just, it wasn't that I didn't understand what I was looking at, but, there's a lot of information that's missing and that we don't get to see. I really wish that John and Tamara had joined up with us and were able to kind of discuss these things, because, I've tried to remain as unbiased as possible during this election, specifically because, I do think that we need to establish a constitution, and I want to be on that constitution committee. I want to help our people write it. But Joe, what do you think? What do you think about that I just read?
So I will say that there is a difference between a standard NIGC audit where they're checking whether a tribal casino operation is following their minimum internal control standards. And a lot of that has to do with, like, for instance, the requisite amount of signatures on, a drop-in count, or proper camera placement in an area of a highly trafficked area on the casino floor, or even a proper payout or a proper withholding of a casino jackpot. That's what NIGC audits, and those are the standard audits. And that's not necessarily what we're talking about here. A forensic audit would, take a deep dive into the books in terms of looking at receipts, who is receiving complimentary meals, the dates, that kind of stuff, in terms of who has been allowed to come into our casino and do business, as third-party vendors, construction, contractors, those types of things. Who have we been greasing the wheels with? Who have we been rubbing elbows with? And that's more of a forensic audit. And I'm interested in that. I think that our auditing within the casino, our internal audit within our accounting department, as well as on the regulatory side with our QTGA, I think they do a phenomenal job of keeping us in compliance. But that's not what we're referring to when we're talking about an internal audit. There's more to it than just that. And a lot of it has to do with the discretionary spending and the expenses of our DDA. And that's really what the business committee should already be receiving. And that goes back to the issue of lack of transparency from the DDA back to the business committee, so the business committee can be held accountable and hold the DDA more accountable, and just to figure out where our money goes, who's receiving our money, where's it going, how's it spent. And then in terms of the Larry Ramsey letter, I applaud him for his courage to come out and speak, because, like Guy said, we've never seen a DDA member resign voluntarily. They've always been voted out of office or under some other circumstance. And, what kind of motive would a DDA member have to resign off of a presumably good paying job if there wasn't some type of ethical or moral conundrum that this person was facing? And everybody that's spoken out against this has felt the wrath or faced the consequences of political retribution or professional retribution.
Lauren, did you have any thoughts to add to that? Or
I feel like everything I would say is what's already been said. I agree with the forensic audit. I think that also it's something I heard about in high school back in like 2008 to 2010. Like, we were joking about us having audits and not really understanding it back then. So it's been in discussion for a lot longer than just this year.
I want to ask you guys also, and I'm going to start with you, Lauren, because I feel like, it's kind of bounced around a little bit. But Saracen, the way that it's discussed, the contract alone is worth between $800 million and $1 billion. And there's certain people out there that believe that we should actually sell Saracen, sell that and just pay off downstream. Because once you pay off downstream, all of that, all of those assets can move towards the tribe. What is your position on Saracen?
Well, I know that other tribes usually pay off their casinos within 3 to 5 years. So I don't understand why we haven't paid off downstream. And to that point, I think I'm okay with keeping Saracen if we're able to balance the books, pay off downstream, and then add on that. It makes no sense to have a mountain of debt. And I have not looked through the loan processes and everything, but I was told we're only paying the interest and not the principal on downstream. So we're never going to pay it off if that's what we're doing. And that sounds like a shark loan to me, but
they have to refinance. I believe it was in 2019. In 2018, Moody's had us actually at a very low rating. And in 2019, I think they were able to establish a new line of credit through junk bonds. But I also believe that comes to maturity in 2022 or 2023.
2023, there's going to be $270 million principal that'll be due in cash. And so whether that exists in a piggy bank somewhere, we don't know.
Right. It's going to be tough to pay $270 million, even with all of this money that we supposedly have coming in. What I think will end up happening is they'll probably end up refinancing again closer to 2023, and again we will have that high interest rate, and we will have not made much ground on it. But I do agree with Lauren. I've heard of several casinos that, I mean, even look at the Eastern Shawnee, Indigo was paid off in a very short amount of time. Even their second tower, their tower costs, I think it was like $13 million less than our second tower. So, and it's beautiful. I mean, Indigo Sky is a beautiful casino. But did you have anything to add to that, Joe?
I think that, to echo what Lauren said, is I am not for stopping operations of Saracen. I just like to know more about it. As a tribal member, I would like to know more about exactly, for instance, with the Cherokee Nation trying to get involved in Arkansas gaming. They spent millions of dollars over a course of 3 or 4 years. They reported that to their people. The people at least knew how much Cherokee Nation was spending on that initiative. We don't know how much was spent on that initiative. We know that we paid some money for lobbyists to make that change and make that constitutional change, allowing for other gaming licenses within the state. But I'm curious to know exactly how much was actually spent on this endeavor, not just what we're reporting in terms of the casino construction site. And even if we can't, as tribal members, know that, if it's like a proprietary confidentiality kind of thing, I think the DDA owes it, or the Saracen Development Authority, whoever it is, owes it to the business committee to share that information and to be more transparent with exactly what kind of expenditures we're taking on. So that's what I have to say about that.
Sounds like most of us are in agreement on a lot of the items I brought up tonight. Is there anything that you guys would like to discuss further, or just something that you think for future that we can work towards?
I mean, I guess kind of bouncing off of Lauren's discussion about the debt. I mean, I think that that's probably the one, at least for information that we're able to get our hands on, kind of like you're saying, through Moody's. I think that the coupon rate on the bonds right now and what we're paying in interest is pretty unbelievable. I think that just aside from the audit, immediately looking to different or at least more conventional financing methods would be more beneficial, particularly ones where we're paying the principal down, where we're actually gaining equity in the property. Because like we said earlier, having to pay the entire $270 million principal back in 2023 is going to be an issue. And there's no telling what kind of interest rate you'd be getting, particularly if you're reissuing bonds on that as well, depending upon what's happening with Saracen. I mean, I'm rooting for Saracen. I hope that everything is happening well down there. Admittedly, I had my reservations about it. I've been through Pine Bluff a few times. I guess I had my questions about it for a location, for a gaming property. But that aside, depending upon its performance come 2023, it will, or I mean, for lack of a better word, affect what the interest rate is going to be on the financing for downstream when it needs to be refinanced. And my deepest concerns, or at least my sincerest hopes, are that it won't shoot it in the foot, because that I do believe that it is a proven property, and I think that downstream is a moneymaker. I just would hate to see it being hampered by poor financing decisions and any kind of tied to the luck of a different property. So that would be my immediate concern on that.
Well, like I said, I think you guys have all brought up some very valid points. I really hope that we can do this again. maybe even get John and Tamara to join in, because, you know, you can have a discussion without all of the derogatory comments and just the blatant attacks that we've seen. You know, and I'm not saying that you guys are guilty of the letters coming out. I know you're getting blamed for it, but I have to say, I didn't receive those letters until like weeks after they came out, and they were addressed to my old address, and I had moved in January, so which I had told the tribe. So the only thing I can come up with is that it was from a previous list. It wasn't from the list this year. And I know several people had also dealt with that same issue. But that's about all I've got. And I'm not actually sure how this is still going, because it told me we had 45 minutes and we've been on here for an hour now. So
I did get some prompt earlier that said that it was going to extend the time. So
Yeah.
I imagine that's why.
Okay. Is there anything you guys would like to add?
I hope everybody has a very safe, very healthy 4th of July. Like I said earlier, I'm sad that we're not doing this down at Beaver Springs right now. But I guess given how crazy everything is right now, it is what it is. So, but I hope everybody enjoys themselves, has a nice holiday with the family or whoever they're able to spend it with. So,
Lauren?
I echo again. I hope everyone has a great weekend. I don't have any plans, so I hope everyone just spends time with their family.
I agree. All right. Well, it has been great speaking with you all. I appreciate each one of you coming on here. As I said, it takes a lot of courage to kind of step up, especially because I've never done this before. And, you know, I hope that we can get together more often. I hope we can, this can be kind of like a starting point for even the business committee. Maybe they could use something like this to speak with tribal members, because I know you can have up to 100 people on here at one time. So it'd be interesting to have 100 people, but I believe it's something we can work on. But I hope you all have a great 4th, and you know, I hope to see you soon.
thanks, John.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Yay.